Okay, there we go. Okay, so let me try this again. We'll do this. This is what we want here. Okay, so Psalms 46. We'll just read the Psalms 46. Ready?
To
right, just right here. Just right over here.
to the
Just right here.
Elohim
is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. Selah. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of Elohim, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. Elohim is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. Elohim shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. Yahweh of hosts is with us. The Elohim of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Come, behold the works of Yahweh, what desolations he hath made in the earth. He makes wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in sunder. He burned the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am Elohim. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Yahweh of hosts is with us. The Elohim of Jacob is our refuge. Selah.
Selah.
Selah. Okay. Hallelujah. Yeah. Okay. So, as we look at the Torah portion, I think there will be some things in the Torah portion that kind of bring us back to the mightiness of Yahweh that we've seen over in that psalm. Doing this transition here, we went from our little series of salvation. We wanted to get back into the Torah portion because that's what we do.
That's what we do.
But I also wanted, well, yeah. I don't have any other reason but that. That's what we do. We study the Torah, right? So what I did want to do was, because of the fact that the annual Torah portion is so much, right? It's so full of things. I wanted to be able to kind of look at, smaller portions, and fortunately enough, there is the triennial portion schedule. We when you look, historically, the annual Torah portion is actually something that came later on, but originally they were on this 3-year cycle. So I found a website that actually has a triennial cycle I've actually known about this for a while, but since I was just kind of in the tradition of the annual cycles, I never really, put too much thought into it. But so what we'll be doing here, I just jumped into, instead of starting at the very beginning, I jumped in, where the cycle is. So they break it up into the 3 years and the weeks inside of the years. So I have here Y1-50, which in the cycle is year 1 and the 50th Sabbath, the 50th week. So, that's where we are now in Exodus, starting with the 20th verse through the end of the 9th. Ninth chapter and through the end of the 9th chapter. So we'll look at that. We'll look at Isaiah 34, 1 through 17. Our psalm was Psalm 46. That's what we had read. And the Brit Hadashah is Revelations 8 through 9 and 6. So, hold on one second here. Hold on one second. Let me get this thing up here. Okay, so we're going to, I think, read the Torah portion. We'll read the Torah portion, I guess just all of it, since it's not that much, and we'll go back and look at some things that I found inside. And anybody have any comments or questions or additions to that? It's more than.
I noticed that she had notes.
Oh yeah. Oh, that is right, because I put out the portion earlier in the week.
Facebook.
Oh yeah, I should have gave it to you to put the email out. Yeah. I'll think about that.
I didn't see it.
I'll think about that next week. Let's read.
I can read it.
Huh?
I'm right here. I can read it.
Um.
I mean, Mom can read it too.
All right, Hippie. We'll let you read verses 20. Just read. I'll stop you if you start getting a little shaky. All right.
Gotcha.
Okay, good. Start at 8:20.
Read loud.
Yeah, read nice and loud so we can hear you.
And Yahweh said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he come forth to the water, and say unto him, Thus said Yahweh, let my people go, that they may serve me. Okay, keep going?
Yeah, keep going. I'll start.
Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground wherein they are. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there. To the end thou mayest know that I am Yahweh in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. And Yahweh did so. And there came a a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and into his servants' houses, and into the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted by reason of the swarm of flies. And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron, and said, Go ye sacrifice to your Elohim in the land. And Moses said, It is not proper to do so, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to Yahweh our Elohim. Lo, shall we sacrifice before the Egyptians before their eyes, and will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, and sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim, as he shall command us. And Pharaoh said, I will let you go, and ye may sacrifice to Yahweh your Elohim. And in the wilderness, only ye shall not go very far away, and entreat for me. And Moses said, Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat Yahweh that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully, and any more in not letting the people go to sacrifice to Yahweh. And Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated Yahweh. And Yahweh did according to the word of Moses. And he removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. There remained not one, and Pharaoh hardened his heart, and this time also neither would he let the people go.
Okay, stop right there. I guess that was. Let's talk about this here before we go on to the next chapter, because I guess so we don't forget.
The next part. Inez, can you hear us? She texted me.
Okay, so let me get this back. Okay, so when we look at what's going on here, we are, we come into the situation. Actually, I guess by the time we get to Passover, we're going to be right over there at this rate. But, we look over at this time and place where we see Moses here in, this back and forth thing that he begins to do with Pharaoh, with asking for the freedom of the people. Something interesting that that we see when we look here at, what's going on with Moses. We see Moses, just looking at the language, Moses is making a request. He is making a request, but I don't know. I'm not sure how much he's asking. It's not like he's kind of begging, I would say. But he is making a request. But usually when you make a request, when you ask of something, there's not a if you don't kind of, clause at the end of it. if I come and ask, can you think you can let me borrow $20? But if you don't, I'm gonna go upside your head. Like, yeah, I mean, there's just a different kind of a context, it seems, with this back and forth with Moses, because he's saying, let my people go. But if you don't let my people go, these bad things is going to happen to you. Like, there's going to be consequences as a result of you not doing it, as opposed to him going and just asking and seeing what Pharaoh will do, apart from, any type of consequences and so on. So when I think about Moses, of course, we look at Moses. Moses really is a picture of Messiah, right? Moses, looking at Moses is a picture of Messiah, in terms of Moses is the deliverer of Israel, right? So that, of course, pictures who Messiah is for us. We can also look at Moses and say that Moses is a picture of Messiah in you. We can also look at Moses and see how Moses is a picture of Messiah in you. Moses is this man that is doing these things, being led by the Spirit. He has this message to deliver to Pharaoh, and he is being led by the Spirit to do so. Moses here is speaking to Pharaoh, right? He speaks to Pharaoh those things that the Father, that Yahweh, that the Master has decreed on behalf of the people. When we look at Pharaoh, Pharaoh really is a picture of the adversary, right? He's a picture of Hasatan. He's also a picture of our carnal mind. So when we kind of exemplify this picture of Moses being this spirit-led individual, speaking these words of freedom to Pharaoh, when we look at this in terms of putting ourselves into the equation, right? If this thing was some mathematical equation, some algebra equations, and you got these variables, Moses, Pharaoh, right? And you put yourself into the equation, at the end of the day, it's your spirit man, your spirit-led man speaking to the carnal mind, whether it's your own carnal mind or whether it's the carnal mind of someone who you're trying to deal with. And again, Moses here is just making it plain. He's letting you know, he's giving you the truth, right? You speaking to Pharaoh, you need to let these people go. And if you don't let these people go, it's going to be consequences, right? There's going to be something to pay as a result of you not doing it, right? So we look, let's look at some of these things that's going on here. Verse 20, it says, and Yahweh said unto Moses, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh. I don't know what version this is. What do you got the scriptures anywhere?
Yeah.
I think this is what this might be, the scriptures, where it says now Yah, or it might be. Oh, what do you got here? The word
of Yahweh. That's the King James.
Oh yeah. This version I have here says, rise early in the morning and present yourself before Pharaoh. The King James says, stand before Pharaoh.
What was that? 8 verse what?
8 verse 20. What's that?
Rise, it says, and Yahweh said to Moshe, rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh.
Oh, it still says that, huh? That's the scriptures? I don't know what version.
Well, mine says present. New American Standard. Present yourself before Pharaoh.
Ah, maybe that's what this is.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but nevertheless, that word is stand or yatsab. Yatsab, which means to place anything so as to stay, as if station, kind of if you're setting up shop. Offer, continue, present selves, remaining, restore. If you think about yatsab in terms of to place a thing so as to say, to stay or to station, there is kind of, I would say, a strength that is involved in the situation. Oh, and look at that. If you look, yatsab, if it's yod, sadi, and bait, which is the hand, it's the man on the side or the travel and the destination, and the and the house plan. I always think I got that thing mixed. I always write it upside down, don't I?
That was like a pen.
Should be like this. So when we look at the word, that means to stand or to station. You have this idea of strength because you're dealing with the arm and the hand. And what that would do is, you do your work with the arm and the hand. So you can have the idea of strength because we exert our strength through the ability that we have to work. The sadi, which is the path and the destination, or it's the hunt, and the end of the hunt, the end result, the cause and the effect. So you bring in strength. You're bringing strength to your path and your destination, and then you also have the house, which is the the family or the house or the plan or that which is necessary to make up the house. So if you bring in strength to on your journey, you're going to be sure to make it to that house or that end result. When you look at Jeff Benner's definition here, he has the walls of the tent enclose what is inside. The tent walls stand firm and strong, protecting it from the harsh elements. As the family swells in size, the tent walls are enlarged. So again, you have this concept of strength and stability inside a family. and strength in the work that they're doing or the path that they're on. And you see all this inside this thing that is translated as stand yourself before Pharaoh or present yourself before Pharaoh. In other words, when Moses is coming to do this job on behalf of Yahweh, he's not kind of like there's strength. I'm saying there's strength involved in it. He's not begging or pleading. He's coming very matter-of-factly, and he's coming with strength, and he's coming boldly into the situation where, yes, he's asking and making requests of Pharaoh, but at the same time, let my people go. For if you don't let my people go, something bad's going to happen, right? There's going to be consequences and repercussions as a result of it. So that they may serve me, Yahweh says. So that they may serve me. Again, we looked at serve. We looked at the word serve last week, abad. Abad, remember, was the word for serve. That servant, that bond servant, because that is what he was looking for in terms of the people, his people who will serve him, right? We have to understand that, of course, the transition is a change of masters, going from one master to another. We're being rescued from Pharaoh, who is the master of Israel, over to a new master who would be Yahweh, of course. Actually, I want to look at all the plagues together. We'll see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll see 4 plagues, I think. And I wanted to look at all of those together at the end. But we see a few things here in regards to what Moses is decreeing here. And in regards to the plagues, we see that Yahweh, of course, is making a division for the people. Goshen, I guess, was part of Egypt, but it wasn't like Goshen was like in the center of Egypt. It was kind of like off to the end, off to the side where they were, but it was still Egypt. And these plagues that were going on, they weren't attacking where Yahweh's people were. So we see the wrath. We see a picture of something that we'll see later on. We see the wrath of Yahweh being given out to the people that are against Yahweh, and yet those same things that are happening aren't happening to the people of Yahweh. They're specifically going towards the wicked. Verse 22, where it says, "But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people are living, so that no swarms of insects will be there. In order that you may know," he's doing that, in order that you may know that I'm Yahweh, that I, Yahweh, am in the midst of the land. I will put a division between my people and your people. Right, so we see the idea here of being set apart. Some translations even say, what is that? 22. Sever. The King James actually says sever there. The idea is setting apart, but the word is translated as sever, which means to distinguish, put a difference, to show marvelous, to separate, set apart, sever, make wonderful. Make wonderful makes you think about kind of this preferential treatment, of course, that's going towards
What was that?
his peculiar sever. I will sever in that day the land of Goshen. But then there's a different word that is division. 23, I will put a division between my people and thy people.
That division is it's not to make wonderful.
No, that is distinction, division, redeem, redemption. Okay, so does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments on chapter 8, verse 20 through 32? Is that still there?
She texted me back. Inez, can you hear us or?
Did you show me?
Yes, still on. Okay, so
I don't know if she's not responding.
Okay, so again, we see when we look here at what's going on in verses 25 through 27, Pharaoh kind of offers this compromise. You can worship him, but don't go. Just do it here. Right? If you want to worship him, fine. Just worship him, but just worship him where you are. Right? So again, when you think about, just let her have this. It's no big deal. When you think about Pharaoh as being, again, a picture of Hasatan, picture of the adversary, picture of the carnal mind. This is what the carnal mind does, right? The carnal mind seeks to come up with these compromises. We may see what the word says for us to do, right? We can see that the word says right there, Yahweh wants this, he wants that. But that carnal mind says, well, I ain't got time for all of that, but here, let me just give you this, right? Let me just give you this, right? And that should be good enough. If you want to worship him, fine. Why you got to go 3 days journey? You can just do it right here. Well, that's your carnal mind, right? So, we see that kind of a picture of what Pharaoh is doing, and we're able to connect that back to how your flesh works. How your flesh wants you to do things and wants those things to be comfortable, right? It'd been uncomfortable for Pharaoh to let these people who was his servants go, right? That was going to be uncomfortable for him, right? That was going to cause him some problems inside of himself, right? So he had to say, well, we can't do it like that, right? It's got to be another way, right? So he put forth this compromise. When you look at 28 and 29, there's another compromise. All right, you can go, but don't go too far. Right? When you look at where it says where they wanted to go 3 days journey in order to worship Yahweh, I saw in one of the commentaries where 3 days journey was kind of an idiomatic phrase for just somewhere that was really far away. It wasn't necessarily 3 days, so to speak, but it was this idiomatic phrase that's giving you this idea that this place was somewhere far. Just like a saying, like you want to know about all these expressions, right? If something's an idiom or idiomatic, right? If something's an idiom, it's just an expression for something else, right? So just to say 3 days journey, it's kind of like how we talk and say, well, it's a Mac. It was a Mac, right? That's kind of idiomatic. We had the Mac all the way up there. It's like that's a long, kind of treacherous kind of a thing. It was the same concept where you look at where he says, 3 days journey into the wilderness was somewhere far. But here again, the Pharaoh is saying, you can go, but 3 days journey, that's just you just taking it too far. Let's just not go that far away. Just stay nice and close, right? And then while you at it, here, say a word for me too. Like, great, put up a couple little prayers for me while you at it. Pharaoh, right? So when we look at this, it seems as if it's giving us kind of a clear picture of what goes on with the carnal mind, where your spirit, is looking at the word, and the word is saying the things that Yahweh likes, the things that Yahweh would have for you to do. And to your carnal mind, those things are uncomfortable. Those things are further away from your comfort level than you would like to be. So then you try to set up these compromises where it's kind of what Yahweh's asking, but it's not what he's asking, is what's comfortable for you to do. Right? And this is what we're seeing with Pharaoh and Moses going on here. And the result is, plague. Plague is a result.
Then he gets punished.
Right, the punishment
even
comes.
Even though he's trying to make a compromise.
Right, he's trying to make a compromise, but it's not what Yahweh said. Yahweh didn't say, let my people go a little bit. He said, let my people go so that they can make this 3 days journey and worship me in the wilderness. So here we see Pharaoh is taking parts of the equation away and saying, well, I'm just going to give you this. Yahweh's not in this whole bargaining. He's not into it, right? So when we look at this whole thing, understanding the struggle that's going on, we look at Yahweh as being this all-powerful Elohim. Right? It seems as if at any point he could really just take over and overpower Pharaoh and just take his people. Right? But for whatever reason, it's necessary for Yahweh through Moses to go and actually have for Pharaoh to submit to Yahweh. Right? It's necessary for Pharaoh to submit to Yahweh. Right? He has to understand and know. He has to understand and know who is really on top. Right? And willfully surrender that power over. Right? So we're able to see that when we look when we look at this, we're able to see that it's necessary. This same kind of process is in us, right? Yahweh doesn't come in us and force us and make us offer our will over to him, right? That will has to be freely given, right? That control has to be freely given over to Yahweh, right? He don't force us, right? But he does give us every good reason why we should follow after him. Okay, does anybody have any thoughts or comments on any of that? Okay, so let's, if nobody doesn't have any comments on the rest of chapter 8, we can just go on to chapter 9 and look at the rest of these plagues and, you know, what's going on with the hardening of the heart of Pharaoh.
9:35.
Here, can you able to read 9th chapter?
Mm-hmm. Then Yahweh said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and speak to him. Thus saith Yahweh, the Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let them go and continue to hold on to them, behold, the hand of Yahweh will come with a very severe pestilence on your livestock, which are in the field, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the herds, and on the flocks. But Yahweh will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, so that nothing will die of all that belongs to the sons of Israel." And Yahweh set a definite time, saying, "Tomorrow Yahweh will do this thing in the land." So Yahweh did this thing on the morrow, and all the livestock of Egypt died. But the livestock of the sons of Israel, but of the livestock of the sons of Israel, not one died. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not even one of the livestock of Israel dead. But the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. Then Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, Take for yourselves handfuls of soot from the kiln, and let Moses throw it toward the sky in the sight of Pharaoh. And it will become fine dust all over all the land of Egypt, and will become boils breaking out with sores on man and beast through all the land of Egypt. So they took soot from the kiln and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses threw it towards the sky. And it became boils breaking out with sores on man and beast. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils were on the magicians as well as on all the Egyptians. And Yahweh hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not listen to them, just as Yahweh had spoken to Moses. Then Yahweh said to Moses, Rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and say to him, Thus says Yahweh, the Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go, that they may serve me. For this time I will send all my plagues on you and your servants and your people, so that you may know that there is no one like me in all the earth. For if by now I had put forth my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, you would then have been cut off from the earth. But indeed, for this cause I have allowed you to remain, in order to show you my power and in order to proclaim my name through all the earth. Still you exalt yourself against my people by not letting them go. Behold, about this time tomorrow I will send a very heavy hail, such as has not been seen in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. Now therefore send and bring your livestock and whatever you have in the field to safety. Every man and beast that is found in the field is not brought home. When the hail comes down on them, they will die. The one among the servants of Pharaoh who feared the word of Yahweh made his servants and his livestock flee into the house. But he who paid no regard to the word of Yahweh left his servants and his livestock in the field. Now Yahweh said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward the sky, that hail may fall on all the land of Egypt, on man and on beast, and on every plant of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched out his staff toward the sky. And Yahweh sent thunder and hail and fire ran down to the earth. And Yahweh rained on the land of Egypt, hail on the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire flashing continually in the midst of the So there was hail and fire flashing continually in the midst of the hail, very severe, such as had not been in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail struck all that was in the field through all the land of Egypt, both man and beast. The hail also struck every plant of the field and shattered every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the sons of Israel were, there was no hail. Then Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron and said to them, I have sinned this time. Yahweh is the righteous one, and I and my people are the wicked. Make supplication to Yahweh, for there has been enough of Elohim's thunder and hail. And I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. And Moses said to him, as soon as I go out of the city, I will spread out my hands to Yahweh, and thunder will cease. And there will be hail no longer, that you may know that the earth is Yahweh's. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear Yahweh, Elohim. Now the flax and the barley were ruined, for the barley was in the ear and the flax was in the bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not ruined, for they ripened late. So Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread out his hands. Thunder and the hail ceased, and rain no longer poured on the earth. But when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had ceased, he sinned again and hardened his heart, he and his servants. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not let the sons of Israel go, just as Yahweh had spoken through Moses.
Okay, so again, we see this kind of thing that's going on here with these different plagues being poured out on Pharaoh. Pharaoh feeling the effects of the plague, feeling some type of remorse and pain, discomfort as a result of the plague, feeling bad, and then saying, okay, I'll do it. Oh, no. And then when it's gone, oh, no, I ain't going to do it. Right? Just real wishy-washy and back and forth. He's just kind of fair weather, throughout all this. What do you say? Just a liar.
Yeah.
Right. So, but when you think about what this carnal mind does, right, in the midst of something, in the midst of trials and tribulations, right, we want to run to Yahweh. In trials and tribulations, we want to run to, run for help. I'll do whatever it is you want for me to do, I'll do it. Right? I can remember back in my undesirable days, anytime I would a whole bunch of vodka, I'd end up on the toilet bowl swearing that I'll never drink it again. But I would drink it again, and then I would just be right back on the toilet bowl, right? Right? And at that time, when I'm feeling the effects of that, when I'm hurting, when there's pain, right? You're willing to change, in the midst of that pain. But as soon as that pain is gone, now, it's just we forget, right? Yeah, it's yeah, it's like yeah, right. So Pharaoh gives us a good picture of the carnal mind. When there's pain, when there's discomfort, when there's all of this displeasure, it's easy to be kind of agreeable at that time. But then as soon as that's passed, now you're just right back to square one. So let's look at some of these things I found interesting when you look. Does anybody have any thoughts about any of this as we begin to look here at the plagues from our one?
Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Oh, I thought you had some comments. So you just saying Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Sister Gabriel. Okay, so plague number 4 was the swarm. Let's see what it says over here in flies is italicized. It's not there in the text. Flies. It's literally swarm. The word is Arab. 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 The word is Arab, which means diverse sorts of flies, or swarm, or swarming. The word Arab, its primitive root is Arab, which of course is the same. It's the same letters. We're just dealing with different pronunciation of the letters. Arab or Arab. Arab. The root means to braid, intermix, traffic. I'm talking about traffic. There's a whole bunch of, we know about some traffic around here. Mingle. It's another word that we see in here. And when you look at this word, Arab, it looks just like Aref. It looks just like Aref, which is even, or that mixture, right? Which is giving you that same concept. If you're braiding, you're taking multiple things and mixing them together. If you're intermixing, of course, you have the idea of intermixing or mingling, having these things that are mixed together. So that's why you could have the idea of this being flies, or it could just be about having just this whole bunch of flying bugs just swarming all over the place. But it was just a lot of bugs mixed together. But looking at how this word for swarm is kind of the same word for, intermixing, like erev, or that mixture of light and darkness. When you think about having a swarm of something, like when you see I've seen like flocks of birds where they look like just this cloud of blackness in the sky just moving around in various directions. I could imagine if of bugs or something, it would be the same kind of a look where you have just this darkness kind of sweeping all over the place. I saw this thing here talking about this Araf, this plague of swarms. The fourth plague that Elohim inflicted on Egyptians was the swarms, from Hebrew meaning mixture. Commentators differ on how they interpret this plague, while many define it as a mixture of wild beasts, including Rashi and most famous commentary of the Torah. Others describe it as a mixture of flies, either one capable of harming both man and livestock. While the first three plagues, Elohim commanding Moses to strike the Nile prior to the advent of the plague, this time all Moses was told was to let Pharaoh know of the impending calamity. So here, I guess it's kind of a transition in the kind of dispersion of the plagues, where the other plagues had to do with, with the river, and this one was just about Moses just saying what was going to happen. And again, when we look at this plague, the word intermix, this braid, this mingle. And we see, if we look back now, we remember what was going on with Pharaoh at this time, where he was trying to kind of propagate this intermix and this mingle, right? Where he was trying to say, well, you can worship him, but you can't go nowhere. Or you can go somewhere, but don't go far. He was trying to, there was a mingling of obedience and disobedience being mixed together. When this actual plague was even given. So we see that the plague actually has something to do with what was going on. The judgment, the punishment kind of fit the crime here, because it was an intermixing that was going on by Pharaoh, in order to cause this thing to even come to pass in the first place. So I just thought that was kind of interesting in terms of this word swarm. Might have any thoughts or comments on that before we go on to the next plague? Pestilence.
That you don't like flies.
Yeah, I hate flies.
But then they do they turn to the boils, or
no. Boils is not next, right? You got 4 would have been the flies, and then next is the pestilence, and then next after that is the boils.
Palestine.
That's next. That's the pestilence.
Okay.
Okay, so next, of course, is the pestilence, is the death of the cattle. The hand of Yahweh will be upon thy cattle, which is in the field, upon the horses and upon the donkeys, upon the camels and the oxen and the sheep. They'll die, right? So if you left your animals outside, they died, right? It says, because it clearly says the cattle which is in the field, those is the ones that will die. Because we'll see later on that there was some other thing that happened where affect the animals. So everybody didn't leave the animals out, because we see animals later on, right? But here they was to bring their cattle in if they wanted them not to die. But the ones that was out in the field, those was the ones that was going to die. And then you see that's what happened. And again, you also see that these plagues again were this thing that was directed towards Egypt. It was directed towards those that were against Yahweh. The enemies of Yahweh was the ones that was receiving this plagues. It was getting this wrath of Yahweh that was being poured out against them because of their disobedience. They were receiving these plagues, this plague of death of the animals upon them. When we look at the plague against the animals, some commentators talk about the fact that this could have been a, because you look, and some might say that each plague, there was a connection to a specific god that was kind of being called out or destroyed in the act of the plague that was being done. And there were various kind of, cattle gods that were in play in Egypt. Without thinking about it, we can just think about the fact that when, right, the first thing that they did was to make this golden calf, right? Again, we have these various gods that are, that are these animal gods. Where we see that Egypt had this reverence of animals. And, when we think about this, again, just bringing this forward to where we are in terms of our animal self, our instincts, just moving off of instincts. That's kind of, when we're dealing with our carnal mind, that's where we are. We're giving reverence or raising up our animal selves, the animalistic part of us. We raise up, right? And when we make that transition, when we leave from our old master of carnal mind, Pharaoh, into our new master, who is Yeshua, and our spiritual mind, there has to be a death that happens to this animal self, right? We can't lift up or reverence this animal self anymore, right? We can't be motivated by, through instinct and by our the things that we want to please within our animal selves, right? So you kind of see a picture of that when you see this death to the animals, right? This death to the animals, right? Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we want in our situation, is really that death to the animal soul, the death to the lifting up and the pacifying of the needs and wants of our instincts, our carnal mind. Okay, yeah, so that was 5. The pestilence, the destruction of the wild stock. Number 6 then was the boils, where it was kind of fanciful thing that went on with this. Well, hold on, taking the dust and tossing it in the air and becoming this stuff that turned into boils. And then it's interesting that here we see where it talks about, in verse 11, and magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils. As if we're also entering now into this kind of a transition of where, even though we know these things are all kind of happening by the power of Yahweh, it still seems as if Moses is kind of doing this magic, right? He has his staff and he touches the water, right? And this thing is happening. And, you have this, well, actually the pestilence was something where he just said it was going to happen, and then it happened.
This he actually did something.
But now he did this thing with the dust, and he, you know what I mean, and throws it off, where it still kind of seems like it's this kind of a magical thing. I'm saying kind of it just from a physical perspective. But
not explain.
But the adversaries, the ones who could potentially come up with some counterfeit thing, now they're being kind of equalized by this thing, where now if they wanted to try to kind of combat this thing, there wasn't nothing they could do, because they were kind of being taken out of the picture, was now affecting them, right? These boils, these sinkholes in the flesh, an ulcer or a boil or a botch. Shechin is the word, to burn inflammation, that is an ulcer, boil, or botch. Shechin. The boils. And again, this is something where it's an attack on the body. It's an attack on the flesh. It's an attack. We see how it attacks these magicians. And we can look at how it is attacking any kind of physical retaliation, any type of physical action that can be done against what Yahweh is having to be done. So we can look again, just like the other one, we can look and see how he did the thing with the animals, where we think about our animal soul. And again, now when we have this attack on the flesh, we can talk about the connection between this other thing. This other thing, I guess, this is another kind of manifestation of the same thing, as something that has to be killed and mastered and done away with in order to move forward, right? We look at Pharaoh as being that carnal mind, that animal soul, that body, that flesh. All these things are things that have to be destroyed first. Right? We see where they're going through the processes of actually destroying these things, doing away with these things, so that Pharaoh will know who Yahweh is, and Israel also is also learning who Yahweh is, and seeing his might and seeing his power, seeing how these things are affecting those that are contrary to him, and seeing how love and desire for his people and the lengths that he's going through in order to himself. And then the last thing we see here in terms of the plagues is the hail. Which when you think about hail, it seems like they're these little ice balls. But here it's kind of like this fire.
Yeesh.
But they're described as hail, so it's kind of like this fire. It's like ice and fire, like icy fires. It's unnatural kind of a thing, right?
Yeah,
That's going on. Huh?
That would melt.
Well, yeah, it seems like it would melt, but it's just like a fireball. It has to be some kind of substance that it comes from. It's just this unnatural thing that's going on. It's hailstones and it's fire. It's just this thing that's going on.
It's just funny that the people were starting to be like, all right, I just had these boils, so let me put my cattle in the shed or whatever, or barn or wherever they put it at, and the houses. The people who actually was starting to believe that something was going to actually happen.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was saying that when we look at this, when we look at the hail, it seems like if there was any thought as to the authenticity of Yahweh, now at this point when you done got to the hail, where it's kind of this supernatural kind of thing that's going on, where we must be beyond the thought of this being some kind of magical trick that Moses is doing with this staff.
Like it's coming from Moses. It has to be coming from higher.
Right. Where you're seeing kind of the supremacy of Yahweh through this hail, right? Because before, even with the last one, Moses is, Yahweh said for him to do it. Moses is doing a thing, right? He's doing this stuff with the ashes. He's doing this stuff with his stick, right? But now we got this thing where it's this hail fire that's falling out of the sky, where you're able really just to understand the supremacy of Elohim and the fact that, again, looking at this and figuring out, how this kind of lines up with our situation, is understanding that we have to really know and understand where Yahweh is, what his place and his supremacy in all things, right? And know that he is in control of everything, right? And he's able to create and he's able to destroy, right? And we see that that's what's going on, is this definite destruction of those that are operating contrary to the will of Yahweh. And all of that being said, going through all of that, we see with Pharaoh and this hard heart of his, this hard heart that Pharaoh has. When we look at Pharaoh, this is kind of his main kind of a thing. Like Pharaoh's heart, or Pharaoh's heart had become hard based on this thing that he has seen. But really, when you look at Pharaoh, that's really the main picture that we have, of Pharaoh, is this idea of this stony heart, this hard heart, this unpliable heart, right? Where, again, these things are happening. Again, these things come against Pharaoh. Hardships. He concedes, and then as soon as they're over, right, he's right back again, right? Because his heart is hard. Kazak. Kazak is that word, hard. to fasten. Right, it's in place. It's steadfast. It's strong. To seize. Figuratively, it means courageous. That word kazak. Strengthen. Confirm. To be constant. That word kazak. To fortify. To make hard. It means mighty. Strong. To behave self-valiantly. To withstand. We see all of these things inside of this word kazak, where it talks about the hard heart, the kazak lab of Pharaoh, this hard heart. His heart is steadfast. His feelings, his will, right? The center of his everything is hard, right? So this is fundamentally who Pharaoh is. When we look and see where it says that Yahweh made Pharaoh's heart hard, or he hardened his heart, we look at who Pharaoh is, we see that his heart is what it is, right? If it's steadfast, it's not something kind of that just kind of comes and goes. The fluctuation just becomes because of the fact that he has a stony heart. These things that he's professing, these things that he's saying that he's going to do, he's just saying those things because he's under duress, but he doesn't really mean it, right? He's still back where he was. His heart is still the same. His heart never changes, right? He's saying what needs to be said out of the punishment and actually feeling the results of these things that's going on. But at the end of the day, his heart is steadfast in the idea of not letting Israel go. So I'm not one of the ones that would sit up here and talk about the idea of Yahweh hardening Pharaoh's heart, because it seems to me that Pharaoh's heart is hardened. The situation will call for him to behave as if he had a soft heart, but really it's just out of pain and discomfort that he makes these decisions and says these things. But when those things are over, when there's like a reprieve to the discomfort, then he just goes back, just falls back in line to the place that he is naturally. So when we look at bringing this to ourselves, when we talk about this hard heart, we talk about Pharaoh being that carnal mind. That's the problem with these people out here, where they have this hard heart, where they've never had that spiritual heart transplant, and they have this stony heart, where they find out about things that Yahweh will have for his people to do, and then you start doing those things, but you ain't never had your heart changed. You still got our heart, so that makes you wishy-washy, right? That makes you Johnny come lately, right? That makes you fair weather friend, right? And when things are bad, that's when you fall off, right? Because your heart is hard, right? And the situation just brings to light the truth of who you are. In good times, you behave as if your heart is soft, but at the end of the day, it's really hard, right? If you're one of those who's never really had that true conversion, that heart transplant, right? So we see that picture with Pharaoh, where he, when times is rough, then he's really ready to be agreeable to Moses' demands. I mean, when things are good, after the rough. Like he has a rough time. Oh, I'm so sorry. Your God really is God. And then, he has that reprieve, and then it's right back to usual, right? Because his heart is already hard, right? His heart is hard. His will is hardened, right? Because after all, when you think about Pharaoh, in this time, in this place where he was, Pharaoh is God. Pharaoh is God to these people, right? So you can't come, my servants can't come and tell me that their God is over me if I'm Pharaoh, right?
You're the servant.
Right, you're the servant. So how's I'm over your God, right? If I'm Pharaoh, right? So when I look at this whole idea of this hardening of the heart, it's really just kind of a baseline. Like a hard heart is the baseline for Pharaoh, right? That's where he's at regularly, right? And then we see examples of him. We see examples of him where he has these elevations, right? He's kind of bipolar with a situation, right? Where, when things are good, he's agreeable. When they're bad, when they're bad for him, he seeks for them to be good again, and then he forgets what happened, right?
I think that it was his power that caused it to get better. His influence.
Right. Or some irrational thing. Because that's what we do with our carnal mind. We ration away things. We don't give the proper credit to Yahweh when we should, and we behave solely from that hard heart and that carnal mind perspective. And this is a perfect parallel to be able to look at this and see that this is what goes on, and this is the thing that we need to actually come away from, is this Pharaoh mindset, this hard heart, right? We actually need to be transformed from this, right? When we're redeemed by Yeshua, this is the thing that we are being redeemed from, is this hard heart, right? We need to be transformed from this thing that we see going on with Pharaoh, and the fact that there has to be a total transformation so that we can be free from this thing. Okay, does anybody have any thoughts or comments, questions, additions, insights to any of this?
Does that make you want to change your heart? Are you going Isaiah next?
Yeah, Isaiah's next. Nobody doesn't have anything to say. Look at up. Well, let's turn to Isaiah 34, 17 verses.
That's the whole chapter.
34. Yeah, that is, ain't it?
Okay.
That.
Draw near, O nations, to hear, and listen, O peoples. Let the earth and all it contains hear, and the world and all that springs from it. For Yahweh's indignation is against all the nations, and his wrath is against all their armies. He has utterly destroyed them. He has given them over to slaughter. So their slain will be thrown out, and their corpses will give off their stench, and the mountains will be drenched with their blood, and all the hosts of heaven will wear away. and the sky will be rolled up like a scroll. All their hosts will also wither away, as a leaf withers from the vine, or as one withers from the fig tree. For my sword is satiated in heaven. Behold, it will descend for judgment upon Edom and upon the people whom I have devoted to destruction. The sword of Yahweh is filled with blood. It is sated with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For Yahweh has a sacrifice in Basra, and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Wild oxen shall also fall with them, and young bulls with strong ones. Thus their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust become greasy with fat. For Yahweh has a day of vengeance, a year of recompense for the cause of Zion. And its streams shall be turned into pitch, and its loose earth into brimstone, and its land shall become burning pitch. It shall not be drenched night or day. Its smoke shall go up forever. From generation to generation it shall be desolate. None shall pass through it forever and ever. But pelican and hedgehog shall possess it, and owl and raven shall dwell in it. And he shall stretch over it the line of desolation, and the plumb line of emptiness. Its nobles, there is no one there, whom they may proclaim king, and all its princes shall be nothing. And thorns shall come up in its fortified towers, nettles and thistles in its fortified cities. It shall also be a haunt of jackals, and an abode of ostriches. And the desert creatures shall meet with the wolves. The hairy goat shall also cry to its kind. Yes, the night monster shall settle there, and shall find herself a resting place. The tree snake shall make its nest and lay eggs there, and it will hatch and gather them under its protection. Yes, the hawk shall be gathered there, every one with its kind. Seek from the book of Yahweh and read. Not one of these will be missing. None will lack its mate, for his mouth has commanded, and his spirit has gathered them, and he has cast the lot for them, and his hand has divided it to them by line. They shall possess it forever, from generation to generation. They shall dwell in it.
Okay, very good. So we see here some interesting things. Just kind of working backwards, we see this land, this desolated land that is kind of being overrun and deeply inhabited by all of these scavenger type animals. These owls and these dragons and things.
Dragons?
Does your book say dragons?
I'm gonna say dragons.
No, my book says dragons.
Oh, no.
Just elongated monsters.
owls,
Ravens and owls. And these things that are just kind of just feasting on the land. And the desolation, right? They're feasting on the desolation, right? Because of the fact that these people had been slaughtered. So we look at these kind of prophetic verses. A lot of times when we see them, of course, there's people and places that are named. Here it's talking about Edom, the Edomites in the land of Edom. But the preface, the beginning, was in verse 2, for the indignation of Yahweh is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them into the slaughter. So he's giving you this example of a wicked nation, right? But I wouldn't say that this is kind of limited to that one particular nation, based on the fact that it starts off in saying that this whole thing is because of my indignation towards all nations, right? And then it's giving you an example of one particular nation, and kind of using them as an example. His wrath here. Well, I want to reference. I don't want to read all of this Revelation, but I do want to say what's going on
in Revelation scriptures.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and forth, but I want to just say what's going on in Revelation, because they kind of parallel scriptures when you look at what's going on in terms of judgment as a result of wickedness, right? We talked about in the other scripture where there is this kind of satiation, this building up of wrath, as if like there was this Yahweh's sword is like filling up with wrath, and then he didn't have nothing else to do when it got to a certain point but to just go out and use that sword that was full of wrath against wickedness. But when we look over in Revelation in chapter 8 and a little bit of 9, it's the same thing. Where in Revelation 8:1, where it says, when the Lamb broke the seventh seal, and there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. Whereas the same time where it talked about in verse 6, I think, where we can, in verse 6 and 17, in that great day of his wrath is coming, who is able to stand? And these things that happen that kind of parallel to this thing that you could connect directly to wrath, like the sun becoming dark and the moon becoming full of blood and these stars falling from heaven, what it talks about in chapter 6 of Revelation. But you see the same thing happening over in chapter 8, where, like, say for instance, go down to verse 7 of chapter 8. The first sounded, and there came hail and fire, kind of like what we saw over there with judgment in Exodus, with this hail fire coming down, which was judgment on the wicked, none for the righteous, against those that was against Yahweh, mixed with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third part of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the grass was burned up. And then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures in the sea that had life died. And a third of the ships were destroyed. This is judgment again against the wicked. Now, if you look at this, and it's talking about a third of all of these things. How can a third of all of these things be talking about one specific place, one specific people, when we look at the land of Edom was a place that was potentially 100 miles wide and 20 miles, 100 miles long and 20 miles wide.
Small.
Well, yeah, it's a big place, but it wasn't like
the third of the earth.
Right.
I was saying in reference to the earth. That's
right. In reference to the earth is small, but you're talking about a lot of people and a big place, but you're not talking about a whole bunch, right? But it's giving you that same concept where in Isaiah is giving you this thing that's happening, that's judgment, that the effects of this judgment is everlasting. It's not going to be repaired. There's no repair from this. And in fact, it's going to just become infested with these animals that are going to come and just feed off of the death. Where it's this mass amount of death. As if to say there was like this everlasting supply of food for those that feed off of dead stuff. Right?
They had a feast.
They had a smorgasbord of food because you had all these slain wicked people, right? But here you have the same kind of thing where you have all of this destruction, and a third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died in the waters because they were made bitter. Now, this is the weird part of that. That was just totally crazy. A third of the sun and a third of the moon and a third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them would be darkened, and the day would not shine for a third of it, and then the night the same way. So the night and the day both became a third part shorter. Doesn't that sound crazy? So it seemed like if you got a third less day, then you would get a third more night. But in this situation, you get a third part day, a third less day, and a third less night. Just the whole day all the way around just becomes a third part shorter. Just everything is just messed up, right? But this all is a result of this wickedness that is created. You know, wickedness of men, like unto that of Edom. Right, this one who is, right, Esau, who sold his birthright. He hated his birthright, so he sold it. Right, who was this one? It talks about how Yahweh hated Esau and he loved Jacob. But why did he hate him? He hated him because he hated Yahweh. He hated Yahweh, so Yahweh hated him back. Right? It's the same idea when you look at this Pharaoh and his hard heart. His heart, he had a stony heart. Right? So it wasn't as if Yahweh was making his heart stony. His heart was already that way. It's not like Yahweh made Esau so that he could be this kind of antithesis of his brother.
He didn't create him for destruction.
Right. He used him because of the fact that he was this one who just wasn't about. He wasn't about righteousness. And Jacob was about righteousness, right? And we, just like we looked at in the Psalms, how we serve the God of Jacob. We serve the God of Jacob. Right? But we see here with this whole thing with, looking back in Isaiah, how and matching that over with Revelation, where there will come a time of judgment, and those that align themselves with this whole with wickedness as exemplified by Edom, right? Those people will be killed, right? And made desolate and left for dead in a place where they will never recover. And when we look over again at Revelation, putting the two passages together, and we talk about a third part, if a third part of the earth is being affected, that's a huge part, right? And that's more than just dealing with one specific people. But what that is really is giving you a picture of wickedness being eradicated by Yahweh at this time of judgment. Mm-hmm. And again, looking all the way back to the Torah portion in Exodus, where these plagues, this wrath is being poured out on the wicked, and the righteous are being spared. Right? If somebody was ever going to talk about anything that resembled a rapture, the wrath of Yahweh is where that thing belongs, in terms of Yahweh punishing the wicked for their wickedness on this earth. at a time before he makes everything new. But again, look at the example. Yahweh's people are right there. Yahweh's people are there. They're just not being affected by these things that are going on. So it's interesting when we're able to look at Exodus. We see in Isaiah this thing where it's giving you this end time picture of this great act of wrath and vengeance towards the wicked, which is also paralleled in Revelation, and giving you this picture of kind of just utter destruction of all of those that are outside of the fence. And again, we see Yahweh working his might and his power against those that come against his will and his ways. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments? I won't go too late into the night. But if don't nobody have anything to say about it, I guess we can adjourn for now. Done. Okay.